What would you do if the woman whose life you saved from a fiery crash turned out to be the CEO of the very company that crushed your dreams? Would you call it destiny or the universe's cruelest joke? This is the extraordinary true story of a single father who risked everything to pull a stranger from burning wreckage, never knowing that this one split-second decision would unravel a web of corporate rejection, hidden identities, and impossible choices. When financial desperation drives him to apply for his dream job, only to face a devastating rejection, he has no idea that the woman he rescued holds the key to his family's future in her hands. But when the truth finally comes to light, will gratitude triumph over pride? Can love bloom from deception? And what happens when a powerful enemy threatens to destroy the fragile bond they've built? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The screech of tires on asphalt cut through the humid Phoenix evening like a knife. Noah Davies was cycling home from his second job at Desert Tech Solutions, a small IT consulting firm in downtown Phoenix, when he witnessed the luxury Mercedes sedan lose control on the rain-slicked curve of Camelback Road. The vehicle careened through the metal guardrails and flipped twice before slamming into a massive saguaro cactus with a sickening crunch of metal and glass without hesitation. Noah abandoned his bicycle on the roadside and sprinted toward the wreckage, his heart hammering against his ribs. 20 yards away, he could smell the acrid stench of leaking gasoline mixing with the desert air. Through the spider web of shattered windshield glass, he spotted a woman with shoulder-length black hair slumped unconsciously over the steering wheel, a thin line of blood trickling from her temple. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Noah called out, pressing his face against the cracked driver's side window. The woman didn't respond. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and Noah's basic first aid training kicked into overdrive as he assessed the situation. The car's engine was smoking ominously, and he could hear the dangerous hiss of escaping fluids. The driver's door was completely jammed from the impact, but the passenger side looked accessible. Noah raced around the vehicle, kicking away chunks of safety glass and twisted metal. With desperate strength born from pure adrenaline, he managed to wrench open the passenger door and crawl inside the wreckage. "Ma'am, I'm going to get you out of here," he said, even though she remained unconscious. "My name is Noah. You're going to be okay." Her seatbelt had locked during the crash, and Noah struggled to find the release mechanism in the dim light. His hands were shaking as he finally managed to unbuckle her and carefully support her neck and head. She was petite, probably in her early 30s, wearing an expensive-looking charcoal business suit that was now torn and stained with blood. The smell of gasoline was getting stronger. Noah knew they had minutes, maybe less, before the situation became catastrophic. With extreme care, he managed to maneuver the unconscious woman out through the passenger side, supporting her full weight as he dragged her away from the wreckage. They had barely made it 30 feet when the Mercedes erupted in a massive fireball. The explosion knocked Noah to his knees, his arms still protectively wrapped around the woman's limp form. Heat seared his back through his work shirt, and debris rained down around them as the desert night was illuminated by towering orange flames in the flickering glow of the fire. The woman's eyelids finally fluttered open, revealing striking dark brown eyes that seemed to reflect the flames. She looked up at Noah with confusion and vulnerability that was completely at odds with her professional appearance. What happened?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the crackling of burning metal. "You were in an accident," Noah explained gently, still cradling her head to prevent any sudden movements. "But you're safe now. An ambulance is coming." Indeed, the distant wail of sirens was already growing louder, someone else having called 911 after witnessing the crash. The woman tried to sit up, but Noah held her steady. "Don't move too much. "You might have a concussion or neck injury," he advised. "What's your name?" "Isabella," she managed to say, then seemed to lose focus again. I can't remember." "It's okay, Isabella. Memory issues are normal after head trauma. Just stay still and let the paramedics check you out." As the first ambulance arrived on scene, followed quickly by fire trucks and police cars, Noah found himself reluctantly stepping back to let the professionals take over. The paramedics immediately began assessing Isabella's condition while firefighters worked to contain the blaze that had consumed her vehicle. "Sir, are you the one who pulled her out?" asked a police officer, approaching Noah with a notepad. "Yes, officer. I saw the crash happen and couldn't just leave her there." "That was incredibly brave." Another few minutes in, the officer gestured toward the inferno that had been a luxury car moments before. "You probably saved her life." Noah watched as the paramedics carefully loaded Isabella onto a stretcher. Just before they closed the ambulance doors, she turned her head and their eyes met one final time. Even in her disoriented state, there was something in her gaze that seemed to be memorizing his face, as if she was trying to imprint this moment into her consciousness. "Thank you," she mouthed silently before the doors shut and the ambulance pulled away into the night. The police officer took Noah's statement, praising his quick thinking and heroic actions. After providing his contact information and declining the offer of medical attention for minor burns on his back, Noah retrieved his somewhat damaged bicycle and continued his journey home. He lived in a modest, two-bedroom apartment in Tempe, about 15 minutes from downtown Phoenix. The complex was called Desert Springs Apartments, and while it wasn't luxurious, it was clean, safe, and affordable, three qualities that mattered more than anything else to a single father working 2 jobs to make ends meet. "Daddy!" 7-year-old Riley Davies came running to the door the moment Noah turned his key in the lock. Riley had Noah's same warm brown eyes and unruly dark hair, but possessed an energy and optimism that never failed to lift his spirits, no matter how exhausting his day had been. "Hey there, kiddo," Noah said, scooping Riley into a tight hug. "How was your day with Mrs. Chun?" Mrs. Chun was their elderly neighbor who watched Riley after school until Noah got home from work. "We made paper airplanes and she taught me how to fold origami cranes." "Look," Riley excitedly showed off a collection of colorful paper birds arranged on the coffee table. "Mrs. Chun says if you make 1,000 cranes, you get to make a wish. That comes true." Noah smiled, though he could feel the weight of unpaid bills sitting on the kitchen counter calling to him. "That's amazing, Riley. Did you finish your homework?" "Most of it. I'm still working on that math worksheet about fractions, but it's really hard." "No problem. After I take a quick shower, we'll tackle it together, okay?" As Noah headed toward the bathroom, he caught sight of himself in the hallway mirror. His face was streaked with dirt and ash, his work shirt was torn in several places, and there was a redness on his neck that suggested minor burns from the explosion. The events of the evening felt almost surreal now, like something from a movie. Rather than his ordinary Tuesday night dot, but as he started the shower and let the hot water wash away the grime and stress of the day, Noah couldn't shake the image of those dark brown eyes looking up at him with such gratitude and intensity. He wondered if Isabella was okay, if she would recover fully from her injuries, and whether she even remembered what had happened once the trauma and medication wore off. What Noah didn't know was that across the city, in the VIP suite of Phoenix General Hospital, Isabella Wong was lying awake despite the pain medication, staring at the ceiling and replaying every detail of her rescue. As the CEO and majority owner of Pinnacle Technologies, one of Arizona's fastest-growing software development companies, she was accustomed to being in control of every situation. But tonight, a complete stranger had risked his life to save hers, expecting nothing in return. In her world of corporate politics, strategic alliances, and calculated relationships, Such selfless action was not just rare, it was virtually extinct, and Isabella Wong was determined to find her guardian angel, no matter what it took. Noah Davies had not always been a man juggling two jobs and scrambling to pay bills. 5 years earlier, he had been a promising software architect at Phoenix Dynamic Systems, one of the city's premier tech companies. His specialty was database optimization and system integration, complex work that paid well and utilized his computer science degree from Arizona State University. But life has a way of reshuffling priorities without warning. When Riley was just 2 years old, Noah's wife Maya was diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer. The next 18 months became a blur of hospital visits, experimental treatments, and watching the woman he loved slowly fade away despite every medical intervention money could buy. Maya passed away on a quiet Sunday morning in March, leaving Noah alone with a 3-year-old who kept asking when mommy was coming home. The grief was overwhelming, but Riley needed stability, routine, and a father who could function despite the gaping hole in his chest where his heart used to be. Phoenix Dynamic Systems had been understanding initially, offering bereavement leave and flexible scheduling. But as months stretched into a year, and Noah's performance suffered under the weight of single parenthood and depression, the company's patience wore thin. When the next round of layoffs came, Noah's name was on the list. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story, that was 3 years ago. Since then, Noah had cobbled together a living through a combination of freelance IT consulting and his current position at Desert Tech Solutions, a small firm that specialized in helping local businesses with their computer systems and network troubleshooting. The pay was a fraction of what he'd earned before, but his boss, Elena Martinez, was a single mother herself and understood the juggling act Noah performed daily. His freelance clients included small restaurants, law offices, and retail shops. Around Phoenix, businesses that needed technical help but couldn't afford the big consulting firms. Noah charged fair rates and delivered quality work, building a reputation for reliability in a market where many freelancers overpromised and under-delivered. The problem was that even working 60 hours a week between both jobs, Noah was barely breaking even. Riley's school expenses, their apartment rent, car maintenance, groceries, and basic necessities consumed every dollar he earned. There was no cushion for emergencies, no savings account for Riley's future, and certainly no money for the kind of experiences he wanted to give his young daughter, things like family vacations, music lessons, or even regular trips to movies or restaurants. Worse still, Noah had been forced to defer his student loans for the past 2 years, and the accumulated interest was turning what had once been manageable debt into a crushing financial burden. Every month, the balance grew larger, and every month, Noah felt like he was falling further behind, despite working harder than ever. The situation had reached a critical point 3 weeks earlier when Riley came home from school with a permission slip for a science camp that cost $300. It was exactly the kind of educational opportunity Noah wanted to provide, but the money simply didn't exist. Watching Riley's face fall when he had to explain they couldn't afford, it had been one of the most heartbreaking moments of his parenthood. That night, after Riley went to bed, Noah had spent hours researching higher-paying positions in the Phoenix area. His technical skills were still sharp, and his freelance work had given him experience with a wide variety of systems and technologies. On paper, he was qualified for senior-level positions at several major companies. Pinnacle Technologies kept appearing in his searches. Founded 12 years earlier by tech entrepreneur Robert Wong, the company had grown from a small startup into one of Arizona's most successful software development firms. They specialized in enterprise-level applications for healthcare, finance, and logistics companies, exactly the kind of complex database work that Noah had excelled at in his previous career. The position that caught his attention was senior systems architect with a salary range that would more than double his current income. The job description could have been written specifically for his skill set: database optimization, system integration, project management, and client relations. Noah spent an entire weekend crafting his application, updating his portfolio with examples from his freelance work, and writing a cover letter that explained his career gap honestly while emphasizing his continued growth and dedication to the field. He submitted the application on a Monday morning with cautious optimism. This could be the opportunity that would transform their lives, giving him the financial stability to provide Riley with the childhood she deserved while building toward a more secure future. The rejection email arrived exactly 1 week later. Thank you for your interest in Pinnacle Technologies. After careful review of your application, we have decided to move forward with other candidates whose experience more closely matches our current needs. We wish you the best in your job search. The message was form letter corporate speak, devoid of any specific feedback or explanation. Noah had received similar rejections from other companies, but this one stung particularly badly because the position had seemed like such a perfect fit. He spent the rest of that day wondering what he could have done differently, what crucial element he was missing that kept him trapped in his current circumstances. Meanwhile, across town in the gleaming headquarters of Pinnacle Technologies, Isabella Wong was facing challenges of an entirely different nature. At 32, she had inherited control of her father's company 18 months earlier, when Robert Wang suffered a fatal heart attack at his desk, working late on a Saturday night as he had done countless times before. Isabella had been groomed for leadership from childhood, earning her MBA from Stanford, and spending 5 years learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. But theoretical preparation and real-world responsibility were vastly different experiences. The weight of 200 employees depending on her decisions, millions of dollars in contracts hanging in the balance, and the constant pressure to maintain the company's growth trajectory had taken its toll. Her personal life had become a casualty of her professional obligations. The demanding schedule left little time for relationships, hobbies, or even basic self-care. Most evenings, Isabella worked until 9 or 10 o'clock, then returned to her upscale condo in Scottsdale to eat, take out alone while reviewing reports and preparing for the next day's challenges. The success was undeniable. Under her leadership, Pinnacle Technologies had landed several major contracts and expanded into new markets. Business magazines had featured her on their covers, praising her innovative management style and strategic vision. At industry conferences, she was frequently invited to speak about leadership in tech and the challenges facing young CEOs. But recognition and financial success couldn't fill the growing emptiness in her personal life. Isabella's parents had immigrated from Taiwan when she was young, sacrificing everything to build a better future for their daughter. Her father had worked 16-hour days to establish Pinnacle Technologies, and her mother had supported him while also pursuing her own career as a physical therapist. Isabella had inherited not just her father's company, but also his workaholic tendencies and his belief that personal sacrifice was the price of professional achievement. The problem was that at 32, she was beginning to question whether the cost was worth it. Her closest relationships were with her assistant, her lawyer, and her accountant, all professional connections that revolved around business needs rather than genuine personal bonds. She had friends from college and business school, but those relationships had withered as everyone became consumed with their own careers and family obligations. The loneliness was particularly acute during evenings and weekends when the office was empty and the city seemed to be filled with couples, families, and groups of friends enjoying the kind of social connections that had somehow passed Isabella by. She had wealth, power, and professional respect, but no one to share them with and no clear path toward the kind of meaningful relationships she secretly craved. The irony was that Isabella's success in business came partly from her ability to read people, understand their motivations, and build strategic partnerships. But those skills seemed useless when it came to forming genuine personal connections. Every interaction felt calculated. Every conversation seemed to have an underlying agenda. And Isabella had lost the ability to trust that people were interested in her rather than what she could do for them. 2 weeks before the car accident, Isabella had attended her business school reunion in California. Watching her former classmates share photos of their spouses, their young families, and their weekend adventures had been more painful than she had expected. Several people had asked about her personal life, and Isabella had deflected with discussions of the company's latest achievements and expansion plans. On the flight back to Phoenix, she had stared out the window at the lights below and wondered if her father had ever felt this isolated despite his success. Robert Wang had been devoted to his family and had always spoken about building the company as a legacy for Isabella's future. But now that the future had arrived, Isabella wasn't sure what she was supposed to do with it. The car accident happened because Isabella had been driving home late from another lengthy day at the office, distracted by a conference call with East Coast clients. She had been thinking about quarterly projections and market expansion when she took the curve on Camelback Road. Too fast for the wet conditions. What she couldn't have anticipated was that her moment of greatest vulnerability would lead to an encounter with someone whose life had been touched by her company's decisions in ways she never could have imagined. Isabella Wang woke up in Phoenix General Hospital with 17 stitches in her forehead, a mild concussion, and an overwhelming obsession with finding the man who had saved her life. The doctors assured her that her injuries were relatively minor. The head wound looked worse than it was, and there appeared to be no lasting neurological damage from the concussion. She would be discharged in 24 hours with instructions to rest and avoid strenuous activity for at least a week, but rest was the furthest thing from Isabella's mind. Every time she closed her eyes, she relived those terrifying moments of regaining consciousness in the wreckage, feeling the heat of approaching flames, and looking up into the face of a complete stranger who had risked his life to save hers. The memory of his voice, calm, reassuring, telling her she was going to be okay, played on repeat in her thoughts. Noah, she whispered to herself, the only concrete detail she could remember from their brief interaction. His name was Noah. The next morning, Isabella's assistant Jennifer Chun arrived at the hospital with a change of clothes, Isabella's laptop, and a stack of documents that required her attention. Jennifer had been with Pinnacle Technologies for 3 years and had become accustomed to Isabella's tendency to work from anywhere. But even she was surprised to find her boss fully dressed and ready to leave the hospital, barely 12 hours after a serious car accident. Isabella, the doctors said you need to rest. Jennifer protested as she watched her employer ignore the discharge paperwork to scroll through news articles about the crash. The company can function without you for a few days. I'm fine, Jennifer. Just a small bump on the head, Isabella insisted, though she was secretly grateful that the headache had finally subsided. Did the police report mention anything about the person who pulled me from the car? Jennifer consulted her tablet, where she had compiled all the available information about the incident. According to the police report, an unidentified good Samaritan witnessed the crash and extracted you from the vehicle before it caught fire. He gave a statement to officers, but left the scene after the ambulance departed. The report lists him as Noah Davies, age 34, resident of Tempe. Isabella felt a flutter of excitement. Noah Davies. Now she had a full name to work with. I want to find him, she announced, finally signing the hospital discharge forms. He saved my life, Jennifer. The least I can do is thank him properly. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. In the 3 years she had worked for Isabella, she had never seen her employer show such intense personal interest in anything unrelated to business. I can have our legal team track down his contact information if you'd like. Send him a gift basket or a thank you note. No, Isabella said quickly. I want to meet him face to face. It needs to be personal. Over the next 2 days, while Isabella was supposed to be resting at home, she instead conducted her own investigation into Noah Davies. A basic internet search revealed limited information. He had profiles on professional networking sites. That indicated a background in software engineering and current employment in IT consulting, but no social media presence or personal details. What Isabella did discover was that Noah had previously worked for Phoenix Dynamic Systems, a company she knew well in the local tech industry. A few discreet phone calls to contacts in the field revealed that he had been laid off several years earlier during a period of downsizing, and was now working for a small firm called Desert Tech Solutions while also doing freelance consulting. Work. The address listed in the police report led Isabella to Desert Springs Apartments in Tempe, a modest complex that was clean but clearly budget-oriented. She drove by several times, trying to work up the courage to knock on his door and introduce herself, but something held her back. What was she supposed to say? "Hello, I'm the woman you pulled from a burning car, and I've been stalking you for 2 days. Instead, Isabella decided on a more subtle approach. If Noah worked in IT consulting, he would likely need computer supplies, software, or technical services on a regular basis. She began researching local computer stores and repair shops, looking for a plausible way to encounter him in a professional context. Desert Tech Solutions turned out to be located in a small office building near Arizona State University, sharing space with an accounting firm and a real estate agency. The company's website was functional but basic, listing services like network troubleshooting, system setup, and small business IT support. Noah Davies was listed as a senior consultant, with a brief bio highlighting his experience in database management and system integration. Isabella's plan was simple. She would visit Desert Tech Solutions with a legitimate computer problem request, Noah specifically based on his expertise, and then find a natural way to reveal her identity and express her gratitude. It seemed foolproof, except for one crucial detail. Isabella's laptop was functioning perfectly, and had been since the day she bought it. This obstacle led to an hour of online research into common computer problems that would require professional attention but wouldn't cause permanent damage to her system. Isabella finally settled on a driver conflict issue that she could artificially create by uninstalling and incorrectly reinstalling certain software components. It would be annoying but fixable, and would provide a legitimate reason to seek technical support. On Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after the accident, Isabella drove to the Desert Tech Solutions office with her sabotaged laptop and a carefully rehearsed story about system slowdowns and error messages. The office was smaller than she had expected, with a reception area that consisted of 2 chairs and a desk where a middle-aged woman was answering phones while simultaneously troubleshooting what appeared to be a printer problem. "Good morning," Isabella said, approaching the desk. "I'm having some issues with my laptop and was hoping someone could take a look at it." The website mentioned that Noah Davies specializes in system problems. The receptionist, whose nameplate identified her as Elena Martinez, looked up with a friendly smile. "Noah's out on a client call this morning, but he should be back around noon. Would you like to wait, or can I schedule you for an appointment later today?" Isabella felt a momentary flutter of disappointment, but quickly recovered. "I can wait. If that's okay. This is pretty urgent for work." "Of course. There's a coffee shop next door if you want to grab something while you wait. I'll call you when Noah gets back." Isabella spent the next 2 hours alternating between the coffee shop and the Desert Tech waiting area, growing increasingly nervous about the encounter she had been planning for days. What if Noah didn't remember her? What if he thought she was crazy for tracking him down? What if the recognition was awkward and uncomfortable for both of them? At 11:45 a.m., she heard the office door open and a familiar voice greeting Elena. "Hey, Elena, The Peterson account is all set up. Their network should be running much faster now. Isabella looked up from the magazine she had been pretending to read and felt her breath catch in her throat. Noah Davies was exactly as she remembered him, medium height, dark hair that looked like it could use a trim, wearing a polo shirt with the Desert Tech Solutions logo. He moved with the kind of quiet confidence that suggested competence without arrogance, and when he smiled at Elena, his whole face lit up in a way that seemed genuinely warm. "Noah, you have a customer waiting," Elena said, nodding toward Isabella. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." "Isabella," she said, standing up and extending her hand. "Isabella Wang. I'm having some issues with my laptop." Noah shook her hand politely, and Isabella searched his face for any sign of recognition. There was none. To him, she was simply another customer with a computer problem, not the woman whose life he had saved just 7 days earlier. "Nice to meet you, Isabella. Let's take a look at what's going on." He led her to a small work area equipped with diagnostic tools and extra monitors. Isabella opened her laptop and began describing the symptoms she had artificially created, trying to sound frustrated but not overly technical. Noah listened carefully, asking clarifying questions and nodding thoughtfully as she explained the problems. "It sounds like a driver conflict," he said after examining the error logs. "Probably something got corrupted during a recent update. This is actually pretty common and usually straightforward to fix." Isabella watched him work, fascinated by the methodical way he approached the problem. His hands moved confidently over the keyboard, and he explained what he was doing in terms that were technical enough to be credible, but simple enough for a non-expert to understand. There was something inherently calming about his presence, the same quality she remembered from the night of the accident. "So what kind of work do you do?" Noah asked as he ran a diagnostic scan. "You mentioned this was urgent for work." "I'm in software development," Isabella said, which was technically true even if it omitted the crucial detail about her being the CEO. "Database applications, mostly. Enterprise-level stuff." Noah's face brightened with interest. "No kidding. That's actually my background too. I spent several years doing database optimization and system integration before I moved into consulting work." "Really? What made you switch to consulting?" "Consulting." Isabella saw a shadow cross Noah's face, and she immediately regretted the question. "Life circumstances," he said simply. "Sometimes you have to adapt to new priorities." They talked for another 30 minutes while Noah worked on her laptop, and Isabella found herself genuinely enjoying the conversation. He was knowledgeable about the technical aspects of software development, but also had insights into the business side of technology that suggested broader experience than his current position might indicate. More importantly, he was easy to talk to. There was no corporate posturing or professional game playing. Just honest communication between two people who shared similar interests. "All right, that should do it," Noah announced, running a final test on her system. "Everything looks normal now. The driver conflicts are resolved, and I updated a few other components while I was at it. Your system should actually run faster than it did before." Isabella accepted her laptop back, noting that he had indeed fixed the problem she had created and probably improved several other aspects of her system's performance. "What do I owe you?" "The diagnostic and repair is $60, Noah said, printing out a receipt. "But honestly, this was pretty minor stuff. If you run into any other issues, don't hesitate to bring it back." Isabella paid with cash, including a $20 tip that made Noah's eyebrows rise slightly. "That's really not necessary," he protested. "Please," she insisted. "Good service deserves recognition." As she prepared to leave, Isabella noticed a bulletin board behind Noah's workstation, covered with what appeared to be drawings and schoolwork. One piece in particular caught her attention, a colorful drawing of two stick figures holding hands beneath a rainbow, with "My Daddy is the Best" written in crayon at the bottom. "That's beautiful artwork," she commented, nodding toward the drawing. Noah's expression softened immediately. "My daughter Riley drew that for me. She's 7, and still thinks I'm capable of fixing anything that breaks." Isabella felt something warm and unfamiliar stir in her chest. "She sounds wonderful. It must be nice to have someone who believes." "And you like that?" "It is," Noah agreed. "Though sometimes the pressure to live up to that faith can be pretty intense." Isabella left Desert Tech Solutions with a perfectly functioning laptop and a growing fascination with Noah Davies that had nothing to do with gratitude for her rescue. He was clearly a devoted father, skilled at his work, and possessed the kind of genuine warmth that was rare in her corporate world. More intriguingly, he seemed to be someone who had faced significant challenges and adapted with grace rather than bitterness. As she drove back to her office, Isabella was already planning her next computer problem and her return visit to Desert Tech Solutions. She told herself it was about properly thanking her rescuer, but deep down, she was beginning to suspect her motivations were more complicated than simple gratitude. What Isabella didn't know was that Noah spent the rest of the afternoon thinking about the interesting woman who had brought her laptop in that morning. There had been something familiar about her that he couldn't quite place, and her questions about his background had been more perceptive than typical customer small talk. She had seemed genuinely interested in his work and his transition to consulting, and her comment about his daughter's artwork had struck him as more thoughtful than polite conversation. For the first time in months, Noah found himself curious about someone outside of his immediate circle of work colleagues and fellow parents. Isabella Wang was clearly intelligent, successful, and attractive, but there had been something almost vulnerable in her demeanor that suggested layers beneath the professional surface. Neither of them realized that they had just taken the first step in a complex dance that would transform both of their lives in ways they could never have imagined. Over the next 3 weeks, Isabella Wang became Desert Tech Solutions' most frequent customer. She returned the following Tuesday with a networking issue that prevented her laptop from connecting to certain Wi-Fi networks. The problem was real this time. She had spent an hour researching how to create authentic connectivity problems that would require professional diagnosis. Noah greeted her with the same friendly professionalism as before, but Isabella thought she detected a hint of recognition in his smile. "Back again so soon? Don't tell me the driver issues came back." "Different problem this time," Isabella said, setting her laptop on his workstation. "Networking troubles. I can connect to my home Wi-Fi, but certain business networks won't accept my connection." As Noah examined her system, Isabella found herself studying him more closely. He wore the same style of polo shirt as before, but she noticed it was meticulously clean and pressed despite being several years old. His work area was organized with the precision of someone who took pride in his craft, and he handled her expensive laptop with the care of someone who understood its value. "Looks like your security protocols are out of sync with some network configurations," Noah explained, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. "Corporate networks often have stricter authentication requirements than home systems. I can update your settings to be more universally compatible." While he worked, they fell into easy conversation about technology trends, industry challenges, and the differences between enterprise and consumer software development. Isabella was impressed by Noah's depth of knowledge and his ability to explain complex concepts in accessible terms. It was clear that he was overqualified for basic computer repair work, which made her curious about the life circumstances he had mentioned during their first encounter. "Can I ask you something?" Isabella ventured as Noah ran diagnostic tests. "You mentioned that you used to do database optimization and system integration. That's pretty specialized work. What made you transition to general consulting?" Noah's hands stilled for a moment on the keyboard. "Personal circumstances," he said carefully. "I had to step back from the corporate world for a while to focus." on family responsibilities. Isabella sensed there was more to the story, but she didn't push. Instead, she said, "That must have been a difficult decision. It takes courage to prioritize what matters most, even when it means professional sacrifice." Noah looked up at her with surprise, as if he hadn't expected such understanding from someone who clearly worked in the corporate world herself. Most people don't see it that way. In the tech industry, career gaps are usually viewed as red flags, rather than life choices. "Most people have never faced real challenges," Isabella replied. "It's easy to judge other people's decisions when you've never had to make difficult ones yourself." There was something in her tone that suggested personal experience with difficult choices, and Noah found himself curious about Isabella's own story. She dressed professionally and spoke knowledgeably about enterprise software, but there was a depth to her observations that hinted at more than just technical expertise. "Your networking issues are resolved," Noah announced, closing the diagnostic window. "I also took the liberty of updating your security software and optimizing a few performance settings. Your system should run more efficiently now." Isabella paid for the service with cash again, including another generous tip that made Noah uncomfortable. "You really don't need to tip so much," he protested. "This is just part of the job. I appreciate quality work," Isabella insisted. "Besides, I can afford it, and you clearly take pride in what you do." As she prepared to leave, Isabella noticed that the bulletin board behind Noah's desk had acquired new artwork since her previous visit. Another colorful drawing was pinned next to the "My Daddy is the Best" picture, this one showing two figures building what appeared to be a sandcastle. "Riley's been busy," Isabella observed, nodding toward the new artwork. Noah's face lit up with paternal pride. "We went to Tempe Beach Park last weekend." She'd never built a sandcastle before, and was fascinated by the engineering challenge of making walls that wouldn't collapse. "She sounds like she has an analytical mind," Isabella said. "Does she enjoy math and science?" "She loves problem solving," Noah confirmed. "Always asking, 'How does this work?' or 'Why does that happen?' Sometimes I think she's going to be an engineer someday." Isabella felt a surprising pang of longing at the obvious love and pride in Noah's voice. She had spent her career building technological solutions, but had never experienced the joy of nurturing a young mind's curiosity about the world. "You're lucky to have her," Isabella said softly. "I am," Noah agreed. She's everything good in my life." The sincerity in his voice made Isabella's chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. As she drove back to her office, she found herself thinking not just about Noah, but about Riley, a 7-year-old girl, who drew pictures for her father and asked engineering questions about sandcastles. Isabella's next visit to Desert Tech Solutions was prompted by a legitimate problem. Her laptop had acquired a virus from a suspicious email attachment. This time, she requested Noah specifically, and Elena Martinez scheduled her for a slot during his less busy afternoon hours. "This is what I get for being curious about suspicious attachments," Isabella said ruefully as Noah examined her infected system. "I should have known better." "Don't feel bad," Noah replied, running anti-malware scans. "These attacks are getting more sophisticated all the time. Even experienced users get caught occasionally." While Noah worked to clean her system, Isabella found herself asking more personal questions. "Elena mentioned that you do freelance work in addition to your position here. That must make for long days." "It does," Noah admitted. "But the extra income helps with, well, single parenting is expensive." Isabella felt a moment of surprise. She had assumed Noah was married, though she realized she had never seen a wedding ring. "Riley's mother isn't in the picture?" Noah's expression grew somber. "She passed away 4 years ago. Cancer." The simple statement hit Isabella like a physical blow. Suddenly, Noah's career transition and his obvious devotion to his daughter made complete sense. He hadn't chosen to step back from the corporate world. He had been forced to rebuild his entire life around the reality of single parenthood and loss. "I'm so sorry," Isabella said, meaning it completely. "That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was," Noah said quietly, not looking up from the computer screen. "Riley was only 3 when Maya died. For a while I wasn't sure how we were going to manage. But kids are resilient, and somehow we figured it out." Isabella was quiet for several minutes, processing this new information. The man who had saved her life was also someone who had faced tremendous personal loss and had rebuilt his world around caring for his daughter. The courage required for such a transformation was staggering. "Riley sounds like she's thriving," Isabella offered. "From her artwork and what you've told me about her curiosity, it's clear she's growing up in a loving environment." Noah smiled. The first genuine smile Isabella had seen since the conversation turned serious. "She's incredible. Sometimes I think she's the one taking care of me instead of the other way around." As Noah finished cleaning her system, Isabella made an impulsive decision. "I noticed you mentioned that Riley enjoys problem solving. There's a science museum downtown that has interactive exhibits designed for curious kids. I've heard their engineering section is particularly good." "The Arizona Science Center?" Noah asked, his interest clearly piqued. "Riley would love that. We've talked about going, but ... He didn't finish the sentence, but Isabella could fill in the blanks. Weekend activities cost money, and single fathers working multiple jobs had to be careful about discretionary spending. "They often have community discount days," Isabella said carefully. "I think I saw something about reduced admission for families this weekend." What Isabella didn't mention was that she intended to anonymously sponsor those discount admissions herself. She had already learned that the museum offered corporate sponsorship, programs that could provide free passes to qualifying families. 2 days later, Noah received a phone call from the Arizona Science Center, informing him that he had been randomly selected to receive complimentary family passes for the weekend. The caller explained that a local business had sponsored community access days, and Noah's name had been drawn from applications submitted by area elementary schools. Noah was confused, since he didn't remember submitting any applications, but the museum representative assured him that Riley's school had entered all students automatically for the drawing. When Noah called the school to verify, the secretary confirmed that they had indeed submitted names for various community programs, though she couldn't provide specific details about which businesses were involved. That Saturday, Noah and Riley spent 4 hours at the Science Center, exploring exhibits about physics, chemistry, and engineering. Riley was particularly fascinated by a display that allowed visitors to build bridges and test their load capacity, and she spent nearly an hour constructing increasingly elaborate designs. "Daddy, look!" Riley called out excitedly as her latest bridge successfully supported a model car. "I figured out how to make the supports stronger by connecting them in triangles." Noah watched his daughter's face light up with discovery and felt grateful beyond words for whoever had made this day possible. In the museum gift shop, Riley carefully selected a small book about famous female engineers, using her allowance money to make the purchase. "This is for when I'm older," she explained to Noah, "so I can learn how to build really big things." On Monday morning, when Isabella returned to Desert Tech Solutions with a printer connectivity issue, Noah greeted her with unusual enthusiasm. "Isabella, perfect timing. I wanted to thank you for mentioning the Science Center discount days." "Riley and I went this weekend, and she had the most amazing time." Isabella felt a warm glow of satisfaction at the joy in Noah's voice. "That's wonderful. Did she enjoy the engineering exhibits?" "She loved them. She spent hours building test bridges and learning about structural design. She even bought a book about female engineers with her allowance money." Isabella's chest tightened with an unfamiliar emotion. The image of a 7-year-old girl using her allowance to buy books about engineering struck her as both heartwarming and inspiring. "She sounds like a remarkable young lady," Isabella said sincerely. "She is," Noah agreed. "And she keeps talking about going back to see the robotics section we didn't have time for." Isabella made a mental note to investigate additional sponsorship opportunities for the museum. If Riley Davies was interested in robotics, Isabella would make sure she had access to every educational resource available. As Noah worked on her printer settings, Isabella found herself asking, what was Riley's favorite part of the visit? "Definitely the bridge building station," Noah replied immediately. "She must have built 20 different designs, testing different approaches to see which ones were strongest. She has this methodical way of trying variations until she finds the optimal solution." Isabella smiled at the obvious pride and love in Noah's voice. "She gets that analytical approach from her father, I'm sure." "Maybe," Noah said. "But she has her own way of looking at problems. Sometimes her solutions are more creative than mine would be." Isabella left Desert Tech Solutions that day with perfectly functioning printer settings and a growing fascination with the Davies family. Noah was clearly a devoted father who had sacrificed his career advancement to provide stability for his daughter after a devastating loss. Riley sounded like a bright, curious young person with the kind of problem-solving mind that could excel in technical fields if given the right opportunities. What struck Isabella most deeply was the love and pride that transformed Noah's entire demeanor whenever he talked about his daughter. In her corporate world, she had encountered many successful people, but she had rarely met someone who spoke about their achievements with the kind of joy that Noah expressed when describing Riley's bridge-building experiments. That evening, Isabella sat in her empty condo looking out at the Phoenix skyline, thinking about a father and daughter spending their Saturday exploring science exhibits together. For the first time in years, her professional accomplishments felt less important than the simple happiness she had witnessed in Noah's voice when he described Riley's excitement about engineering. Isabella was beginning to realize that her weekly visits to Desert Tech Solutions were about much more than computer repairs and expressing gratitude for her rescue. She was drawn to something she had never experienced before, a family built on love, sacrifice, and shared curiosity about the world. Isabella's fifth visit to Desert Tech Solutions coincided with an unusually slow Tuesday afternoon when she arrived with complaints about sluggish performance and random crashes. She found the office quieter than usual, with Elena Martinez handling phone calls while Noah worked at his diagnostic station. "Back again?" Noah greeted her with what had become a familiar smile. "At some point, we're going to have to discuss getting you a more reliable computer." Isabella laughed, settling into the chair beside his workstation. "Maybe I'm just hard on technology. Or maybe I'm a perfectionist who notices problems other people would ignore." As Noah began his examination of her laptop, Isabella noticed something different about the office atmosphere. The usual background hum of activity was absent, and Elena seemed to be juggling more tasks than normal. "Quiet day?" Isabella asked. "Elena's assistant called in sick, and our other technician is out on a family emergency," Noah explained. "So it's just the two of us holding down the fort. Not that I'm complaining, it gives me a chance to focus on more complex problems." As he worked, Isabella found herself observing Noah with growing appreciation for his professional competence. His diagnostic approach was methodical and thorough, and he explained technical issues in terms that were precise without being condescending. She had worked with many IT professionals over the years, and Noah's combination of technical skill and communication ability was genuinely impressive. "Can I ask you something?" Isabella said as Noah ran performance tests. "Have you ever considered returning to enterprise-level work? Your skills are clearly suited for more complex challenges than basic computer repair." Noah's hands paused on the keyboard. "I've thought about it," he admitted. But enterprise positions require flexibility that I don't have right now. Long hours, travel, unpredictable schedules. It doesn't work when you're a single parent. With a 7-year-old. What if the right opportunity came along? Isabella pressed. Something that offered better compensation, but understood your family obligations? Those positions don't exist, Noah said with a slight smile. Corporate America isn't known for accommodating single fathers who need to be home for dinner and bedtime stories. Isabella felt a spark of indignation on his behalf. Noah was clearly talented and dedicated, but the inflexibility of corporate culture was keeping him trapped in positions that didn't utilize his full potential. It seemed like a waste of human capital that benefited no one. Your performance issues were caused by conflicting background processes, Noah announced, closing the diagnostic window. I've optimized your startup sequence and cleaned up some registry problems. The system should run much faster now. As Isabella paid for the service, she noticed that Noah looked more tired than usual. His usual cheerful demeanor was intact, but there were subtle signs of fatigue around his eyes. Long night? She asked with genuine concern. Noah rubbed his forehead. Riley had a rough night. Bad dreams, trouble sleeping. When she can't sleep, I can't sleep. Isabella felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. Is she okay? She's fine, Noah assured her. Just one of those phases kids go through. She's been having nightmares about losing people she cares about. The school counselor says it's normal for kids who've experienced loss, but it's still hard to watch. The vulnerability in Noah's admission touched something deep in Isabella's chest. She could imagine this caring father sitting up all night, comforting a frightened 7-year-old, then coming to work the next day and performing his job with the same professionalism and attention to detail he always displayed. That must be emotionally exhausting, Isabella said softly. It is, Noah acknowledged, but that's parenthood. Her needs come first, always. As Isabella prepared to leave, she made an impulsive decision. Noah, this might sound presumptuous, but would you and Riley be interested in having dinner somewhere this week? As a thank you for all the excellent service you've provided. Noah looked surprised by the invitation. That's very kind of you, but you really don't need to, please. Isabella interrupted. I enjoy our conversations, and I'd love to meet Riley, if you're comfortable with it. Noah hesitated, clearly torn between politeness and some internal reservation. Riley doesn't meet many new people, he said carefully. She can be shy with strangers. We could go somewhere kid-friendly, Isabella suggested. Somewhere she'd feel comfortable. Maybe that pizza place near the university that has the arcade games. The mention of arcade games seemed to tip the balance. She does love those games, Noah admitted. And she's been asking for pizza all week. They settled on Thursday evening at Gino's Pizza Palace, a family restaurant known for its relaxed atmosphere and extensive selection of arcade games. Isabella spent Wednesday evening researching appropriate conversation topics for 7-year-olds and worrying about whether she would know how to interact with Riley. Thursday arrived with Isabella feeling more nervous than she had before any business presentation. She chose her outfit carefully, professional enough to maintain credibility, but casual enough to seem approachable to a young person. Dark jeans, a soft blue sweater, and minimal jewelry. Isabella arrived at Gino's 5 minutes early and immediately spotted Noah and Riley at a corner booth. Riley was smaller than Isabella had expected, with Noah's dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and bright, curious eyes that were currently focused on the crayon drawings scattered across the table. Isabella. Noah stood up as she approached, and Isabella was struck by how different he looked outside the office environment. More relaxed, more himself. This is my daughter Riley. Riley, this is Isabella, the friend I told you about. Riley looked up from her drawings with frank curiosity. Hi, she said politely. Daddy says you work with computers too. I do, Isabella confirmed, sliding into the booth across from them. What are you drawing? Robots, Riley announced proudly, turning her artwork so Isabella could see it properly. I'm designing robots that could help people build things. Like construction robots that could work with humans to make buildings safer. Isabella studied the drawings with genuine interest. Despite being created with crayons by a 7-year-old, the design showed remarkable attention to detail and logical thinking about function and form. These are incredible, Riley. I especially like how you've designed the arms to be flexible but strong. That's a real engineering challenge, Riley beamed at the praise. Daddy taught me that the best designs solve real problems. So I try to think about what problems my robots could solve. Over pizza and conversation, Isabella found herself genuinely charmed by Riley Davies. The young girl was articulate, thoughtful, and possessed a natural curiosity about how things worked. She asked Isabella thoughtful questions about her work, listened attentively to the answers, and offered observations that were surprisingly insightful. Do you like building things with computers? Riley asked as they shared a dessert pizza. I do, Isabella replied. But I mostly work on programs that help businesses organize information. It's not as creative as designing robots. But it still helps people, right? Riley persisted. Daddy says the best jobs are ones that help people solve problems. Isabella glanced at Noah, who was watching the interaction with obvious pleasure. Your father is very wise. Yes, my work helps people, but in different ways than robot construction would. After dinner, they moved to the arcade section, where Riley demonstrated surprising skill at various games. Isabella found herself caught up in the young girl's enthusiasm, cheering her successes and offering encouragement during challenging levels. Isabella, watch this. Riley called out from a basketball shooting game. Daddy taught me about trajectory and arc. Isabella watched in amazement as Riley consistently made baskets by applying what appeared to be genuine understanding of physics principles to her shooting technique. Noah stood beside them, beaming with pride at his daughter's accomplishments. She's remarkable, Isabella told Noah quietly while Riley focused on a complex puzzle game. Her combination of creativity and analytical thinking is exceptional. She gets that from her mother, Noah said softly. Maya was an artist, but she also had an engineer's mind. Riley inherited the best of both approaches. As the evening wound down, Riley surprised Isabella by hugging her goodbye, a spontaneous gesture that made Isabella's eyes unexpectedly moist. Thank you for dinner, Riley said politely. And thank you for listening to my robot ideas. Most adults just smile and say, that's nice, without really paying attention. Thank you for sharing them with me, Isabella replied sincerely. I hope you'll keep designing and dreaming big. In the parking lot, as they prepared to go their separate ways, Noah lingered beside Isabella's car. Thank you for tonight, he said earnestly. Riley doesn't open up to new people easily, but she clearly felt comfortable with you. That means a lot. She's an extraordinary young person, Isabella replied. You should be incredibly proud of the job you're doing as her father. I try, Noah said simply. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping up, but she makes it all worthwhile. As Isabella drove home, she found herself thinking about the Davies family with a mixture of admiration and longing. Noah and Riley had something she had never experienced, a bond built on love, mutual respect, and shared dreams for the future. Their modest circumstances hadn't diminished their joy in each other's company or their excitement about Riley's potential. For the first time in her adult life, Isabella began to question whether professional success was enough. She had built a company, accumulated wealth, and earned industry recognition, but she had never experienced the kind of deep, abiding happiness she had witnessed in Noah's eyes when he watched Riley solve problems and pursue her curiosity about the world. The following week, Isabella found herself returning to Desert Tech Solutions with what she knew was a fabricated computer problem. But this time, her motivation had evolved beyond gratitude or even romantic interest. She was drawn to the Davies family by something deeper, a longing to be part of the kind of loving, supportive relationship they had created together. When Noah greeted her with his now familiar smile and asked about her latest technical difficulties, Isabella realized that her weekly visits had become the highlight of her week. Not because of any business benefit or networking opportunity, but because spending time with Noah and hearing about Rayleigh's latest discoveries made her feel more genuinely happy than any professional achievement ever had. What Isabella didn't yet understand was that she was about to discover the true cost of the deception she had been maintaining, and that the growing bond between herself and the Davies family was built on a foundation that was far more fragile than any of them realized. Noah's world began to unravel on a Wednesday morning that started like any other. He was reviewing client files at Desert Tech Solutions when Elena Martinez approached his workstation with an unusual expression of concern. "Noah, I just got off the phone with Pinnacle Technologies," Elena said, settling into the chair beside his desk. "They're looking for freelance consultants to help with a database migration project. The pay is excellent, and I immediately thought of you." Noah looked up with interest. Pinnacle Technologies was one of Phoenix's premier software companies, exactly the kind of client that could provide both good income and valuable experience for his portfolio. "That sounds promising," Noah replied. "What's the project scope?" "Enterprise database optimization and system integration," Elena explained. "Basically everything you specialized in before you came here." The contact person said they specifically requested someone with your background and experience level. Noah felt a flutter of excitement mixed with cautious optimism. "Did they mention how they heard about my work?" "That's the interesting part," Elena said, consulting her notes. "Apparently, someone recommended you specifically. They wouldn't say who, but the recommendation must have been very strong because they're offering premium rates without even interviewing you first." Something about the situation struck Noah as unusual, but the opportunity was too good to question. Extensively, premium consulting rates would allow him to reduce his freelance workload while still maintaining the income he needed for Riley's expenses and their modest lifestyle. "Should I contact them directly?" Noah asked. "Already arranged," Elena smiled. "You have a meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. with their project manager. The address is downtown, in that new glass building on Central Avenue." The next afternoon, Noah dressed in his best business attire and drove to downtown Phoenix. Pinnacle Technologies occupied several floors of a gleaming office tower, with modern design and high-end furnishings that spoke to the company's success and growth. The receptionist directed Noah to a conference room where he was greeted by a project manager named David Kim, who outlined the database migration project in detail. The work was complex but well within Noah's capabilities, and the compensation was indeed generous, nearly double his usual freelance rates. "This seems straightforward," Noah said after reviewing the project specifications. "When would you need me to start?" "Immediately, if possible," David replied. "We're on a tight timeline, and our CEO has made this project a high priority." As they concluded the meeting, David handed Noah a folder containing additional project details and security protocols. "You'll be working closely with our technical team, and you'll have direct access to our CEO if any major decisions need to be made." "Your CEO gets involved in technical projects?" Noah asked with surprise. "Isabella Wang is very hands-on with important initiatives," David explained. "She has a strong technical background and likes to stay informed about." Noah's blood went cold. "Did you say Isabella Wang?" "Yes, she's our CEO and majority owner. Brilliant woman, inherited the company from her father and has grown it significantly. Do you know her?" Noah's mind raced as pieces began falling into place. Isabella Wang, CEO of Pinnacle Technologies, the same company whose HR department had rejected his job application 6 weeks earlier with a form letter dismissal. I need to think about this opportunity, Noah said carefully, standing up from the conference table. Can I get back to you tomorrow? David looked surprised by the sudden change in Noah's demeanor, but agreed to hold the position open for 24 hours. Noah drove home in a state of growing agitation and confusion. Isabella Wang, the woman he had been having dinner with and sharing personal conversations with for weeks, was the CEO of the company that had rejected his application without even granting him an interview. That evening, after Riley went to bed, Noah sat at his kitchen table with his laptop and began researching Isabella Wang more thoroughly than he ever had before. What he discovered made his stomach turn. Isabella Wang, age 32, CEO of Pinnacle Technologies since inheriting the company from her deceased father, graduate of Stanford Business School, estimated net worth in the tens of millions, featured on the covers of business magazines as one of Arizona's most successful young executives, but it was the photographs that hit Noah like a physical blow. Professional headshots of Isabella at industry conferences, award ceremonies, and corporate events. The same face that had smiled at him across pizza tables and listened to Riley's robot designs with apparent genuine interest. Noah's phone buzzed with a text message from Isabella. Hope you're having a good evening. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow for my printer problems. The casual, friendly tone of the message felt like mockery now. Noah stared at his phone, trying to process the magnitude of the deception. Isabella Wang, billionaire CEO Isabella Wang, had been pretending to be an ordinary customer while secretly manipulating his professional opportunities and probably laughing at his naivety. Noah spent the night alternating between anger and humiliation. How many of his recent lucky breaks had actually been Isabella's manipulations? The Science Museum passes for Riley, the referral to Pinnacle Technologies. Even the consistent computer problems that had brought Isabella to Desert Tech Solutions week after week. The next morning, Noah called David Kim and declined the consulting position, citing personal reasons. Then he drove to Isabella's office building. Pinnacle Technologies' executive floor was even more impressive than the conference rooms, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Phoenix skyline and artwork that probably cost more than Noah earned in a year. The receptionist informed him that Miss Wang was in meetings, but Noah insisted he would wait. 2 hours later, Isabella emerged from a conference room surrounded by executives in expensive suits. She was dressed in professional attire that probably cost more than Noah's monthly rent, and she moved with the confident authority of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. When Isabella spotted Noah sitting in the waiting area, her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and then what looked like fear. "Noah," she said, approaching him cautiously. "What are you doing here?" "I think you know exactly why I'm here, Ms. Wang," Noah replied, standing up. "Or do you prefer Isabella? I'm having trouble keeping track of which version of you is real." Isabella glanced around at the other executives and employees who were beginning to notice the confrontation. "Can we discuss this privately?" "My office is—" "No," Noah said firmly. "I'm not interested in more lies and manipulation. I know who you are, Isabella. I know about Pinnacle Technologies, I know about your net worth, and I know that you've been playing games with my life for weeks." "Noah, please, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think," Noah interrupted, his voice rising despite his efforts to stay calm. "You're the CEO of the company that rejected my job application without even granting me an interview. Then you decided it would be amusing to play fairy godmother, manipulating my opportunities while pretending to be just another customer." Isabella's face had gone pale. "The job application. I had no idea you had applied. HR handles all applications independently. I never—" "Stop lying," Noah said harshly. "Just stop. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I thought you were someone genuine, Someone who actually cared about Riley and me as people. But we were just your charity project, weren't we? The poor single father and his cute daughter, perfect subjects for your guilt-ridden philanthropy. That's not true, Isabella protested, tears beginning to form in her eyes. My feelings for you and Riley are completely genuine. The help I provided wasn't about charity. It was because I care about both of you. You care about us. Noah laughed bitterly. You don't even know us. You've been interacting with some fantasy version of our lives while hiding your true identity. That's not caring, Isabella. That's manipulation. The elevator opened and several more employees stepped out, clearly curious about the raised voices in their normally quiet executive suite. Isabella looked around desperately. Noah, please let me explain. Explain what? How you rejected my application while secretly deciding I was worthy of your pity? How you manipulated situations to make yourself feel better about your guilt? How you involved my daughter in your elaborate deception? The mention of Riley seemed to hit Isabella like a physical blow. I never meant to hurt Riley. Everything I did because she's an amazing young person who deserves every opportunity. Don't you dare, Noah said, his voice shaking with anger. Don't you dare use my daughter to justify your lies. Riley trusted you, opened her heart to you, and you were lying to her the entire time. I wasn't lying about caring for her, Isabella said desperately. Or about caring for you. Yes, I should have told you who I was from the beginning, and I'm sorry for that. But my feelings are real, Noah. What we've built together is real. What we've built. Noah stared at her in disbelief. We haven't built anything, Isabella. You created an elaborate fiction and convinced me to participate without my knowledge or consent. That's not a relationship. It's a manipulation. Noah turned toward the elevator, then stopped and looked back at Isabella one final time. Stay away from us, he said quietly. Riley has been through enough loss and disappointment. She doesn't need to discover that someone else she trusted was lying to her. As the elevator doors closed, Noah caught a glimpse of Isabella standing alone in the executive suite, tears streaming down her face. But his anger and humiliation overwhelmed any sympathy he might have felt. That evening, when Riley asked why Isabella hadn't visited the shop recently and when they might see her again, Noah had to tell his daughter that Isabella wouldn't be coming around anymore. The disappointment in Riley's eyes was almost unbearable, but Noah was determined to protect her from further heartbreak. What Noah didn't know was that across town, Isabella Wang was sitting in her empty condo, staring at the business card David Kim had left on her desk with Noah's contact information, trying to figure out how the most genuine connection she had ever experienced had become the most painful loss she had ever endured. For 3 weeks after the confrontation at Pinnacle Technologies, Isabella Wang threw herself into her work with an intensity that worried even her most dedicated employees. She arrived at the office before dawn and stayed until well past midnight, reviewing contracts, analyzing market reports, and micromanaging projects that had previously run smoothly without her constant oversight. Jennifer Chun, Isabella's assistant, had worked with demanding executives before, but Isabella's current behavior was unlike anything she had witnessed. The woman who had once been decisive and efficient now second-guessed every decision, called unnecessary meetings, and seemed incapable of focusing on any task for more than a few minutes. Isabella, you have the Morrison Industries presentation. In an hour, Jennifer said, entering Isabella's office with a stack of documents. The marketing team is waiting for your final approval on the slides. Isabella looked up from her computer screen with red-rimmed eyes. She had been staring at the same financial report for 20 minutes, without absorbing any of the information. What presentation? Isabella asked, though Jennifer had reminded her about the Morrison meeting twice already that morning. The quarterly review for our largest client, Jennifer explained patiently. You've been preparing for this meeting for weeks. Isabella nodded absently and turned back to her computer, but Jennifer could see that her boss was nowhere near ready for such an important presentation. In desperation, Jennifer made an executive decision. "I'm rescheduling the Morrison meeting," she announced. "You're clearly not well, and we can't afford to lose our biggest client because you're not functioning at full capacity." For the first time in days, Isabella focused completely on something other than her computer screen. "You can't reschedule. Morrison Industries. That account represents 15% of our revenue. Then you need to get whatever is bothering you under control," Jennifer said firmly. "Because right now, you're a liability to this company and everyone who depends on it for their livelihood." The harsh words hit Isabella like cold water. She looked around her office at the awards on the walls, the photographs from industry, events, the expensive furnishings that represented years of professional achievement, and realized that none of it provided any comfort or meaning. Without the connection, she had lost. Meanwhile, across town, Noah Davies was facing his own crisis. Without Isabella's subtle interventions, his financial situation had deteriorated rapidly. 2 of his freelance clients had terminated their contracts, citing budget constraints, though Noah suspected the real reason was his declining performance over the past few weeks. Noah's focus at work had suffered as he struggled to process his anger and disappointment about Isabella's deception. Simple tasks that he had once completed efficiently now required multiple attempts, and his usual patience with difficult customers had evaporated entirely. Elena Martinez had noticed the change in Noah's demeanor and work quality, but she attributed it to personal stress rather than any specific incident. When Noah's errors began affecting client relationships, however, Elena knew she had to address the situation directly. "Noah, I need to talk to you," Elena said, approaching his workstation on a Thursday afternoon when the office was relatively quiet. Noah looked up from a computer he had been struggling to diagnose for over an hour. "What's up?" "Your work has been suffering lately," Elena said gently. "You've always been our most reliable technician, but in the past few weeks, I've had 3 customers complain about incomplete repairs or poor service." Noah felt a flush of shame. Elena had been understanding and supportive throughout his time at Desert Tech Solutions, and he hated the idea of letting her down. "I'm sorry, Elena. I've been dealing with some personal issues, but that's no excuse." "For poor work, what kind of personal issues?" Elena asked with genuine concern. "Maybe there's something I can do to help." Noah considered telling Elena about Isabella and the humiliating discovery of her true identity, but the story was too complicated and painful to explain. "It's nothing I can't handle," he said instead. "I'll do better." Elena studied Noah's face, recognizing the signs of someone struggling with emotional distress. "Take a few days off," she suggested. "Spend some time with Riley. Clear your head and come back when you're ready to focus." Noah wanted to protest that he couldn't afford time off, but Elena was right. His current performance was helping no one. He agreed to take the rest of the week off and use the time to get his priorities back in order. That evening, Noah was helping Riley with her math homework when she asked the question he had been dreading. "Daddy, why doesn't Isabella come visit us anymore? Did I do something wrong?" Noah's heart clenched at the innocent confusion in his daughter's voice. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Isabella just ... She got busy with other things. But she promised to help me design better robots," Riley said sadly. "And she said she wanted to see my engineering book from the museum." Noah struggled to find words that would comfort Riley without revealing the full truth about Isabella's deception. "Sometimes adults make promises they can't keep," he said carefully. "It doesn't mean they don't care about you." Riley was quiet for several minutes, working on a multiplication problem with unusual concentration. Finally, she looked up at Noah with serious eyes. "Are you sad about Isabella too, Daddy?" The perceptive question hit Noah harder than he had expected. Riley had always been unusually attuned to his emotional state, a sensitivity that had developed after her mother's death when she had learned to monitor the adults around her for signs of distress. "A little bit," Noah admitted. "But I'm okay, and you're okay, and that's what matters most." Riley nodded solemnly and returned to her homework, but Noah could see that she was still processing the loss of someone who had become important to her in a very short time. What Noah didn't know was that his troubles were about to get much worse. 2 days later, he received a certified letter that made his blood run cold. The return address was from the law offices of Bradford, Hayes, and Associates, one of Phoenix's most expensive legal firms. The letter informed Noah that he was being investigated by the Arizona Department of Child Services for suspected neglect and inadequate supervision of his minor daughter. The complaint had been filed anonymously, but included detailed allegations about Noah's work schedule, Riley's after-school care arrangements, and what the complainant characterized as unstable living conditions. Noah read the letter 3 times before the full implications sank in. Someone was attempting to have Riley removed from his custody, and they had hired high-powered attorneys to make it happen. The letter requested that Noah appear for an interview with DCS representatives within 10 days, and warned that failure to cooperate could result in immediate intervention to ensure Riley's safety and welfare. Noah's hands were shaking as he reached for his phone to call the Legal Aid Society. He had no idea who might have filed such complaints or why, but he knew that fighting a custody battle against well-funded opponents would require legal representation he couldn't afford. As he waited on hold for a legal aid attorney, Noah stared at Riley's latest artwork on the refrigerator, a drawing of the 2 of them building sandcastles at the beach, with the caption, "My Daddy and Me," written in careful 7-year-old handwriting. The thought of losing Riley was more terrifying than any financial crisis or professional setback he had ever faced. But as Noah listened to the hold music and prepared to fight for his daughter's future, he had no idea that the anonymous complaint had been filed by someone with a very personal agenda and the resources to make his worst fears come true. Anonymous complainant who had filed the report with Arizona Department of Child Services was Marcus Bradford, a prominent family law attorney who specialized in high-stakes custody cases. Bradford had been hired by someone willing to pay premium rates for a comprehensive investigation into Noah Davies' fitness as a parent. Bradford's initial report painted a damning picture of Noah's circumstances: a single father working multiple jobs with irregular hours, relying on elderly neighbors for childcare, living in modest apartments with a history of financial instability and employment gaps. The report characterized Riley as at risk due to inadequate supervision and her father's inability to provide consistent care. What the report didn't mention was that Bradford's investigation had been thorough enough to uncover Noah's connection to Isabella Wong, CEO of Pinnacle Technologies. This information had been particularly interesting to Bradford's client, who had very specific reasons for wanting leverage over Isabella's personal relationships. The client was Richard Chun, Jennifer Chun's older brother and a former business partner of Isabella's father. 5 years earlier, Richard had been forced out of Pinnacle Technologies following a financial scandal involving misappropriated funds and falsified contracts. Isabella's father had managed to avoid criminal charges by returning the stolen money, but Richard had been left with massive legal debts and a ruined reputation in the Phoenix business community. Since then, Richard had spent years planning his revenge against the Wang family and looking for opportunities to damage Pinnacle Technologies. When his sister Jennifer mentioned Isabella's unusual behavior and her mysterious weekly absences from the office, Richard had hired a private investigator to follow Isabella and document her activities. The investigator's reports about Isabella's visits to Desert Tech Solutions and her growing relationship with Noah and Riley had given Richard exactly the leverage he had been seeking. If he could threaten Noah's custody of Riley, He could force Isabella to make concessions that would benefit him financially while damaging her emotionally. Richard's plan was elegant in its cruelty. He would use his legal connections to build a case for removing Riley from Noah's custody, then approach Isabella with an offer to make the problem disappear in exchange for a substantial financial settlement and business concessions. Noah's first meeting with the DCS caseworker took place on a gray Monday morning in a sterile government office building. The caseworker, a tired-looking woman named Sandra Williams, reviewed Noah's file with the practiced efficiency of someone who had seen too many troubled families. "Mr. Davies, we've received some concerning reports about your daughter's living situation," Sandra began, consulting her notes. "Can you tell me about your current employment and childcare arrangements?" Noah explained his work schedule at Desert Tech Solutions and his freelance consulting activities, emphasizing that he was always home in time for dinner and bedtime routines. He described Mrs. Chun's role as Riley's after-school caregiver and provided documentation of his income and housing stability. "The report suggests that your work obligations prevent you from providing adequate supervision for Riley," Sandra continued. "There are also concerns about her emotional well-being following the loss of her mother." "Riley is thriving," Noah said firmly. "She's an excellent student, she has friends at school, and she's been seeing the school counselor regularly to help her process her grief. I can provide references from her teachers, her counselor, and our neighbors." Sandra made notes as Noah spoke, but her expression remained neutral and professional. "We'll need to schedule a home visit to assess Riley's living conditions, and we'll want to interview her separately to understand her perspective on the situation." The home visit was scheduled for the following week, giving Noah time to prepare Riley for the interview without alarming her about the serious nature of the investigation. He explained that a social worker would be visiting to ask questions about their family, and that Riley should answer honestly about their daily routines and how she felt about their life together. The night before the home visit, Noah spent hours cleaning their modest apartment and organizing Riley's school papers, artwork, and other evidence of her healthy development. He prepared a folder of documentation, Riley's report cards, medical records, letters from teachers, and photographs showing their activities together. Sandra Williams arrived promptly at 10 a.m. with a colleague who specialized in interviewing young people. They spent 2 hours examining the apartment, reviewing Noah's documentation, and observing his interactions with Riley. Riley was her usual articulate, confident self during the interview, describing her daily routines, her friendships at school, and her close relationship with her father. When asked about her mother's death, Riley spoke matter-of-factly about missing Maya, while also expressing contentment with her current life. "Daddy takes really good care of me," Riley told the social workers. "He helps me with homework and he listens to my robot designs, and he always makes sure I'm safe and happy." After the social workers left, Noah felt cautiously optimistic about the visit's outcome. Riley's obvious health and happiness, combined with the evidence of stable housing and consistent care, seemed to contradict the allegations in the anonymous complaint. But Noah's optimism was shattered 2 days later when he received another letter from Bradford, Hayes and Associates. This time, the letter was more direct and threatening. The letter informed Noah that DCS had been provided with additional evidence suggesting that Riley was being exposed to inappropriate adult relationships and unstable emotional environments. The letter specifically mentioned Isabella Wong by name and suggested that Noah's involvement with wealthy individuals of questionable character raised concerns about his judgment and priorities. More devastatingly, the letter announced that Bradford's clients were prepared to file for emergency custody of Riley, claiming that immediate intervention was necessary to protect her welfare. The letter stated that a hearing had been scheduled for the following Friday, just 5 days away, and that Noah would need legal representation to contest the action. Noah's hands shook as he read the letter a second time. Someone with significant resources and legal expertise was systematically attacking his fitness as a parent, and they seemed to have inside information about his relationship with Isabella. That evening, after Riley went to bed, Noah sat at his kitchen table, trying to figure out who might have filed the complaint and why. The mention of Isabella by name suggested that the attack was connected to her somehow. But Noah couldn't imagine what enemies Isabella might have who would target him and Riley as a way to hurt her. The legal aid attorney Noah consulted was honest about the challenges he faced. Emergency custody hearings favored whoever could present the most compelling case quickly, and Noah's opponents clearly had the resources to hire experienced attorneys and private investigators. "They're using your relationship with Isabella Wang against you," the attorney explained. "The implication is that you're an unstable person who gets involved with inappropriate relationships that could affect Riley's welfare." "But I ended that relationship weeks ago," Noah protested. "And there was never anything inappropriate about it." "The timing doesn't matter to a family court judge," the attorney warned. "What matters is the pattern of behavior they're alleging, and whether they can convince the court that Riley would be better off in someone else's custody." As Friday's hearing approached, Noah faced the terrifying possibility that he might lose Riley not because of anything he had done wrong, but because someone with money and legal connections had decided to use his daughter as a weapon in some larger conflict he didn't understand. What Noah still didn't know was that across town, Isabella Wang had received her own visit from Marcus Bradford and was about to learn exactly what price someone was willing to pay to destroy the most important relationship of her life. Isabella Wang was reviewing quarterly reports in her office when Jennifer Chun knocked urgently on her door, her face pale with distress. "Isabella, there's someone here to see you," Jennifer said, her voice shaking. "It's my brother Richard, and he's with a lawyer. They're demanding to speak with you immediately." Isabella looked up in confusion. She knew Jennifer had an older brother, but had never met him and couldn't imagine why he would be visiting with legal representation. "Send them in," Isabella said, closing her laptop and preparing for what was clearly going to be an unpleasant conversation. Richard Chun entered her office with the swagger of someone who believed he held all the cards. He was accompanied by a sharp-dressed attorney who introduced himself as Marcus Bradford from Bradford, Hayes and Associates. "Isabella Wang," Richard said with a cold smile. "You probably don't remember me, but I worked with your father before. He decided to destroy my career over some minor financial disagreements." Isabella's memory clicked into place. Richard Chun had been her father's business partner until he was caught embezzling funds and falsifying contracts. Her father had covered the losses to avoid criminal prosecution, but Richard had been permanently expelled from the company. "What do you want, Richard?" Isabella asked directly. "I want what your family owes me," Richard replied. 5 years of lost income, legal fees, and damaged reputation. Let's call it an even $10 million. Isabella almost laughed at the audacity. "You stole from my father's company. We owe you nothing." "That's where you're wrong," Bradford interjected, opening his briefcase and placing a folder on Isabella's desk. "We have evidence that you've been inappropriately involved with a man named Noah Davies and his 7-year-old daughter. Mr. Davies is currently facing emergency custody proceedings that could result in his daughter being removed from his care." Isabella's blood turned to ice as she opened the folder and saw photographs of herself with Noah and Riley at Gino's Pizza Palace, along with detailed reports of her visits to Desert Tech Solutions. "You see," Richard continued with satisfaction, "it would be tragic if that little girl lost her father because of your poor judgment in relationships. But these custody proceedings could be made to disappear if you're willing to be reasonable about compensating me for past damages." Isabella stared at the photographs, her mind racing. "You filed the DCS complaint against Noah?" "I hired professionals to ensure that Mr. Davies' fitness as a parent would be properly scrutinized," Bradford said smoothly. "The hearing is tomorrow." Morning, and unless certain financial arrangements are made, I'm afraid the evidence will show that Mr. Davies is an unstable individual who exposes his daughter to inappropriate influences. You're threatening an innocent family to get revenge on me, Isabella said, her voice deadly quiet. I'm protecting a vulnerable young person from a potentially harmful situation, Richard replied. But if you want to resolve this matter privately, I'm sure we can reach an understanding. Isabella looked at the photographs again, seeing Riley's bright smile as she showed off her robot drawings, remembering Noah's gentle pride as he talked about his daughter's curiosity and intelligence. The thought of Riley being torn away from her loving father because of Isabella's connection to their lives made her feel physically sick, but it also ignited a fury she had never experienced before. Get out of my office, Isabella said, standing up slowly. Both of you. I don't think you understand the gravity of, Bradford began. I understand perfectly, Isabella interrupted. You're blackmailing me using an innocent family as leverage. But you've made one crucial mistake. What's that? Richard asked, his confident smile beginning to waver. Isabella picked up her phone and dialed her attorney's direct line. You assumed I would be too afraid to fight back. The next morning, Isabella Wong walked into the Maricopa County family court flanked by 3 of Phoenix's most expensive attorneys. She had spent the entire night working with her legal team, private investigators, and forensic accountants to build a case that would destroy Richard Chun's revenge plot and protect the Davies family. When Noah saw Isabella enter the courtroom, his first emotion was anger. But when she turned to look at him with eyes red from crying and sleepless determination, he realized that something fundamental had changed. Isabella Wong had come to fight for Riley's future, and she had brought every resource at her disposal to ensure that an innocent family would not become casualties in someone else's war of revenge. The custody hearing began with Marcus Bradford presenting his case against Noah Davies with practiced efficiency. He painted a picture of an unstable single father who worked excessive hours, relied on inadequate childcare, and had demonstrated poor judgment by becoming involved with individuals of questionable character. Your Honor, Bradford concluded, our clients are prepared to provide Riley Davies with a stable 2-parent home, excellent educational opportunities, and the kind of consistent supervision that her current situation cannot offer. Noah's legal aid attorney did her best to counter Bradford's arguments, but it was clear that she was outmatched by the resources and preparation of her opponents. Then Isabella's lead attorney, Margaret Torres, stood up to address the court. Your Honor, I represent Ms. Isabella Wong, who has been falsely implicated in this proceeding. We have evidence that this entire custody challenge is not about Riley Davies' welfare, but about a scheme to extort money from my client using this innocent family as leverage. Isabella watched as her legal team systematically destroyed Richard Chun's credibility. They presented evidence of his previous embezzlement conviction, documentation of his threats against Isabella, and recordings of his conversations with Bradford about using the custody case as blackmail. Furthermore, Your Honor, Torres continued, we have conducted our own investigation into Noah Davies' fitness as a parent. Riley's teachers describe her as a happy, well-adjusted young person who excels academically and socially. Her pediatrician confirms that she receives excellent medical care. Her school counselor reports that she has processed her mother's death in healthy ways with her father's loving support. Isabella had spent her own money to hire child psychologists, education experts, and family specialists to evaluate Noah's parenting. Every report concluded that Riley was thriving in her father's care. The judge reviewed the evidence with growing displeasure at the manipulation that had brought the case to her courtroom. Mr. Bradford, it appears that your clients have used this court system to pursue a personal vendetta. This custody petition is dismissed, and I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of possible criminal charges. As Richard Chun and Bradford fled the courtroom in disgrace, Isabella approached Noah cautiously. He looked exhausted but relieved, and when Riley ran to hug him, Isabella saw the pure love that had always defined their relationship. "Thank you," Noah said quietly to Isabella. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Isabella replied. "Riley deserves to stay with the person who loves her most." 1 year later, Noah Davies stood in his new home office, reviewing code for a database optimization project that would launch next month. As Chief Technology Officer of Pinnacle Technologies, he had found the perfect balance between challenging technical work and family responsibilities. Isabella had restructured the company's policies to support working parents, creating an environment where Noah could excel professionally while never missing Riley's school events or bedtime stories. Isabella lived 3 houses down in the same Ahwatukee neighborhood, close enough for daily contact, but far enough to maintain independence while they navigated their evolving relationship. They had never formally defined what they were to each other, but their connection had grown stronger through honest communication and shared commitment to Riley's well-being. "Daddy, look what I built," Riley called from the backyard, where she was constructing an elaborate fort with engineering precision. At 8 years old, she had grown more confident and curious, thriving in an environment where her intelligence was nurtured and her dreams were supported. Isabella appeared at the back gate, carrying a toolbox and wearing work clothes. Saturday mornings had become their traditional time for Riley's construction projects, with Isabella providing engineering expertise while Noah handled the more creative aspects of design. "Isabella," Riley ran to hug her. "I figured out how to make the roof stronger by using triangular supports, just like you taught me." Isabella examined Riley's work with genuine admiration. "That's excellent problem solving, Riley. You're thinking like a real engineer." As they worked together on the fort, Noah watched Isabella interact with his daughter with wonder that never diminished. Isabella had proven her love for Riley not through grand gestures or expensive gifts, but through consistent presence, patient teaching, and unwavering support. That evening, after Riley went to bed, Noah and Isabella sat on his porch swing, watching the Arizona sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "She asked me something interesting today," Isabella said softly. "What's that?" "She wanted to know if I was going to officially become her mom, or if we were going to keep being special family forever." Noah smiled at Riley's 8-year-old logic. "What did you tell her?" "That families come in all different shapes, and what matters most is that people love and take care of each other." Noah took Isabella's hand, intertwining their fingers with comfortable familiarity. "She's right, though. We should probably figure out what we're doing." Isabella leaned against his shoulder, feeling the contentment that came from belonging somewhere. "Completely. We're building something that's never existed before. A family based on choice rather than obligation, love rather than legal documents." Inside the house, Riley Davies sat at her bedroom window, watching her father and Isabella on the porch swing. She smiled as she closed her diary, where she had written in careful 8-year-old handwriting, "Mission accomplished. My family is complete now, and everyone is happy." Sometimes the best plans are the ones that take time to work. The desert stars appeared one by one above Phoenix, shining down on a family that had been formed by rescue, tested by deception, and ultimately strengthened by the kind of love that chooses to fight for what matters most. As Noah and Isabella talked quietly about dreams and possibilities, they both understood that sometimes saving someone's life is just the beginning of the story, and that the most beautiful families are the ones built by people who refuse to give up on each other, no matter how complicated the path to happiness might be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.